Okay. Welcome everybody to our Lunch and Lab workshop for today. The topic is Hubrandity, which is my way of saying brand with humanity. So because we are a group of humans who have not necessarily met each other or talked to each other before, I want to get started with an introduction. So I'll introduce myself momentarily, but in the chat, I would like for you to put your name, your business contact info, and a word that describes how you feel today. So we're going to take this opportunity to get to know each other a little bit. So feel free to drop that info in the chat. Take about 20 seconds to do that. And I will put my contact info in at the end. And feel free to save the chat at the end as well to make sure that you get the contact information for everyone that's here. I do like to think of these events as networking opportunities, if it makes sense for you to do that. So we want to learn and have a good time together, but we also want to connect. So as you drop your information in there, I will do a little intro of myself. My name is Reggie Holmes. I'm the founder and creative director of Enthuse Creative. I'm from Richmond, Virginia, but I live in what is called the DMV, which is DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So I'm in the Northern Virginia area, and I've had my company for 8 years, and but I've been here for 11 years. So I'm from the center of the state of Virginia, but Northern Virginia has been my home for quite a while. I'm a strategist as well as designer. So I work with brands, helping them develop the strategy that forms the foundation for them, as well as the collateral, the designs that communicate them visually and otherwise to their audience. And I think of myself as a thinker and a doer. If I think about who I am as a human being, those two words sort of make sense for me and kind of encapsulate the way I think about myself, who I am and what I do. So I like to think, but I also like to do and create, which has always been there for me since the beginning. So your turn. I want to ask you a question. You can feel free to unmute. We'll have one or two people answer this question if you'd like. If your brand were a person, what type of person would it be? So we have a few points in our workshop where we're, going to be given some talk back. So anybody want to unmute and try to answer that question?
Hi, I'll have a go at it.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I am a person that is bilingual, bicultural, and extroverted, a doer, a thinker, and as well, someone I think that is very driven to achieve good things for good people.
Okay, great. Love that. Anyone else want to take a shot? All right. Well, if you don't want to respond now, I want you to think about that question, because the reality is that people respond to our brands in much the same way that they respond to people. Brands have voices, brands have personalities, brands have attitudes, and they're very much thought of in the same way that we think about people. And we have relationships with brands. There are brands that you buy all the time without thinking about them. You're very comfortable with them. You're very familiar, much like some of your favorite people. And so as we use some of these terms and sort of think about these things, keep that idea in the back of your mind that when we speak about branding, a lot of times we're talking about the relationship between this business entity or product or service and an actual human being, a real person. So what are our goals and objectives for today? I like to break these down into the what, why, and how. So on the what side, we'll be examining and understanding what branding with humanity is, what it means. On the why, the impact and importance of branding with humanity as a modern marketing practice. And then on the how side, what are the approaches, strategies, and tactics of branding with humanity? What are some things that we can do? Presumably, we're all small business owners here, or professionals working in a small or medium sized business, and we can do some of the things that big companies and big brands do to foster a more human brand. We can actually do those things on the small business level. So we want to look at what are some of those basic things that we can start to implement to have this more human brand. So that's what we'll hope to accomplish today. We've got a lot to get to, so hopefully we get through everything and have some time for some Q&A built in at the end. All right. So what's the challenge that we're looking at? You know, if you just kind of look at this time lapse video, it's maybe 15 to 20 seconds, but in this, I mean, you see hundreds of brands represented, right? At any given time. This is just someone walking through Times Square. And so the problem, you know, the challenge that sort of forms the foundation of what we're looking at is this idea that people are dealing with more and more brands on a daily basis. They are being exposed to and experiencing brand imagery, brand messaging all the time. It's almost overload. There's some estimates that say, you know, 5 to 7,000 brand messages you were being exposed to on a daily basis. And so the question, you know, on the human side, on the customer person side is how do I make sense of all these brands that I'm being exposed to? On the brand side, how do I stand out? How do I really connect? And we want to keep that word connection in mind as we go through, because everyone's trying to figure out how to better connect with so much being thrown at the customer, the person, the human on the other side of the brand message. Brands know it's easy to get lost in all of that happening, and consumers, people, more than they used to, are aware that there's a lot of disconnect happening because there's so many data points. So how do we build connection in this modern landscape and environment that we're in? And the thing about this video is that, you know, this sort of takes place in a physical place in Times Square, but the reality is that more and more people are spending more and more time online on their devices, and so this heavy amount of brand messaging and marketing is happening, maybe not as much in physical spaces anymore due to our current environment, but on their phones, on their devices. And so nonetheless, there's still this saturation of branding happening. So how do we create and sustain connection? That's the key question. And human branding has emerged as an answer to this challenge. This company, Mondelez, is a international snack food company, and they coined this term humaning. And so I want to share this video. You can just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it. But they basically last year made up this word to sort of describe their approach on incorporating humanity into what they're doing as far as branding and marketing. And they multinational, they have many sub brands that we're familiar with. They sort of show them at the end. But this is how they are trying to address this challenge. All right. So humaning is their unique approach to marketing. It focuses around real human connections with purpose. And so their idea is to kind of move beyond data and sort of the basic marketing things that people are doing, and really trying to uncover the things that unite us all. And what they say on their website, we're no longer marketing to consumers, but creating connections with humans. And if you noticed before, I was trying to um, prevent myself from saying customers and consumers. What I'm trying to do personally is say humans and people, persons, uh, particularly in the context of this lesson, just because it's important to remember when we're talking about customers, prospects, whomever they might be, they are humans, they are people, and that's a key part of human branding. But yeah, so this company, decided that, hey, we want to, we make Oreos, we make snack crackers, but rather than just talk about the products, rather than just talk about how many people buy our products and things like that, we really want to focus it on the human aspect. And so this is not new. Most people haven't gone to creating a term for it or anything like that, but it just shows that it's a trend. It is popular. It's something that people recognize that they kind of need to do a little bit differently in order to reach more people, because they're not just numbers buying snacks. People don't just run to eat Oreos just because they're things, they're emotions, there are situations, there are events that drive us to go eat our favorite snacks, or to eat certain healthy snacks as opposed to others. And so you saw in that ad, just trying to show real people, trying to create an environment where they're talking about real people, real humans. And so you can put your comments or thoughts on that in the chat. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that they sort of made up a word to do that. And I think one caveat to this approach is that you want to be human without saying we're trying to be more human, or we're trying to talk to real people or about real people. And the goal is that it is authentic, right? Because some people will respond negatively to this sort of, we're trying to be about real human connection. And, in the end, they sort of talk about snacking, right? It's not just for the sake of doing this, it's to get people ultimately back to buying more of their snack products. But there's many different ways to sort of go at it. I thought this was a good one to sort of look at how this large company has decided to take on this idea of humans and building that into their brand and their marketing. This is a graphic that I put together as we sort of start to talk about what branding with humanity looks like. It's two people, so it has the audience in mind. It's four people, so it has the experience of the audience in mind. It's from people, so that really puts the focus on communication that comes from other real people. Real people want to communicate and connect with real people, so it needs to sound, even if a machine or technology assisted in writing the copy or coming up with the concepts, it needs to feel like it came from real people. And what do we love as people? What helps us connect is stories, right? And so as we're talking about our products, talking about our brand, the story is really important, and it needs to be about people. The founder origin story is a great way that people sort of start to bring this into their brand. We want to, at every stage, at every part of our branding, we want to incorporate real people in there. So this graphic sort of shows kind of how that looks as you think about where people fit in throughout this whole process. So your turn, a little talk back. What's a brand that you have a relationship with that in your opinion does a good job of being human? So take that humaning concept as a starting point, and then what's one example of how they do it? We'll maybe have one person, well, if you want to unmute, just sort of share, an example of a brand that does a good job of being human. Any takers? If you can't think of one now or don't want to say it, feel free to write that in the chat.
I have one, Reggie.
Okay, sure. Go ahead, Nancy.
So the first thing that actually came to my mind is something that I use quite a bit, which is Instacart.
Okay.
I get my groceries delivered just for convenience sake, and they check with text with you if they can't find something. They check on how everything's going. They follow up on things afterwards to make sure you're satisfied. If there's a problem if you find a problem with your order, they do not question you. They just say, we will refund your money or we'll credit you for the next order. And I just feel that they do a really good job of showing me that I'm valued as their customer.
That's a great example. And I like that you mentioned them because that's all about technology. And in the past, I think the emphasis was on, hey, look at our tech, look at our algorithms, look at our our machine learning, our AI, all the stuff that allows us to do this. But especially in the pandemic, why did applications like that become really popular? Because it was a way to sort of connect a person to another person, even if we couldn't physically be together. And so that's one reason why this branding with humanity concept is really important. Who knows what the world will look like in a year? Hopefully we're a little bit more like what it used to look like, but let's say that there are still, distancing and separation sort of happening, or just, things not as in person or with physical contact that there used to be. People are going to continue to rely on that type of technology, but if it can be done in a way that still creates that human to human connection, like that there's a real person in the store getting your groceries, and so there's not that physical contact, but there's still that connection. And the technology is not the star of the show, the connection is, but it just allows you to be able to do it more efficiently and more quickly. So
yeah. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. So we'll keep going. If you have any other thoughts, I know we all have relationships with lots of brands, but give some thought to that. You can add it in the chat. All right. So getting on to the what, what Hubrandity, branding with humanity is. All right. So the more human your brand is, the more opportunities you create to be able to potentially connect with more humans. And that's just sort of the reality of where things are. As you build this humanity into what your brand does, it's able to connect you to more and more people. And the goal of branding with humanity is to be able to leverage the way that humans behave and relate to strengthen your brand's effectiveness at connection with your customers. And so the whole goal is taking into account how people behave, the way we are, the way we function as people, and adding elements of that in into your brand positioning, into your brand offerings, and using that to bring some of this connection that we understand, that we crave as people, into our people's connection with our brand. And so that's what we want to do. Make that relationship not just feel like person to brand, but like person to person as much as we can. And there's many different ways to do that, which we'll kind of talk about. I think my slide skipped here. Yes. Oh, so going back, what is branding? Branding is like the an entity's perceived and understood uniqueness and value. So people know who you are, what you're all about, and why it's important to them. And this idea of the evolving modern relationship between humans and brands, it used to be very much, the brand sort of told the human how to think about it. But we live in a world now with social media and other tools where the human is very much involved in shaping what the brand is. The brand can sort of say, we're this over here, but if the marketplace of humans say we don't believe that, or you haven't demonstrated that, then your brand, your reputation, your perceived value, how people understand you, is actually something different. And so there's much more of, not necessarily conflict, but there's a lot more involved than just the brand being what the brand says it is. And so human branding seeks to capture and convey this truth that we need to engage meaningfully. We need to have meaningful relationships. So it's bringing, the meaningfulness that we seek in all relationships into the branding relationship. And it didn't necessarily exist before, but it definitely does now, because we spend more time with our brands. If there's a phrase that I saw that it said, online culture is the culture. So you can barely exist without some participation in the online culture that we live in. And so that could strictly be data and code back and forth, but to bridge that gap, to create meaning, to create significance, brands have come online. And so the things that help us feel connected to brands in the real world, we're seeing those things happen in the online space. And because so much of life for humans is happening online, it makes sense that it's happening that way and going to continue to happen that way. And so this is a little chart showing sort of what branding was versus what branding is. In the past, as I mentioned, it was very transactional. We've got a product or service. You, customer, need it, buy from us. And now it's much more relational. Hey, we have something that you need. Let's figure out how to get it in your hands so that your life can be better, right? It was one way, now it's more two-way. It was something that was for big business, but now a small business can have a very well-developed, robust brand, even if they're not a big company with lots of resources. And it was more about declaration. Again, the brand just sort of saying, this is who we are, this is what we're all about. And nowadays it's more about demonstration. You can't just say we're the best, we have the best service, and that be plastered on billboards or in magazines everywhere and just be accepted as fact, because it's saturated everywhere. It has to be demonstrated. If you actually have terrible customer service, yet you maintain that you have the best, guess what? People will take part in the online culture and communicate that, in fact, you are not what you say you are about, and your brand is actually something different. And that will, have bad consequences, obviously, but it just goes to show that, branding is not one-sided anymore. It's much more of a dialogue, as opposed to a dictatorship. And so that's what we want to keep in mind in terms of human branding. People are looking for a brand relationship that's two-way. If the brand does great, guess what? I'm going to get online and tell people. I'm going to share that message with my friends. If the brand fails to live up to its promises, if it under-delivers, guess what? I'm going to get online. I'm going to tell my friends. So it's a relationship. And the brand's got to do a lot more to keep the human interested and engaged and connected. And honestly, as Nancy alluded to, make them feel valued and valuable. But it's worth it for the brand to do that and take this relational approach, because that person is no longer just the person in their town. They might be an influencer, right? They may be able to, through these tools, amplify that positive message about your brand to a lot more people. And so that one relationship, whereas in the past, it might have been an individual, like, okay, we got one unhappy customer out of a million. That's fine. You know, it's okay. We'll overlook it. They can't overlook it now because they don't know who that one customer can have incredible reach. And so it's put the emphasis on the relationship aspect of brand building. So why is human branding a good response to our changing world? That was a little bit about the what. Now we get into the why, because it all comes back down to people. People are the ones who will build your brand, and it's not just through purchases; it's through perception, as we talked about. It's not just through we've got to get a bunch of people that buy our stuff. We've got to get a bunch of people that, yes, they buy our stuff, but they also build our brand. They also let people know about how great our experience is that we create, how much we value them and take care of them. That's really how today's brands grow. It's not just having a great product, selling a lot of it. It's delivering throughout the whole experience. That's what's really going to help grow your brand. And the people are the essential component. With no business can deliver its product or services without its people. And those people are the people within the organization, the staff, the stakeholders, and then externally, the customers, the partners, the suppliers, and the vendors. So people are at the core of why this is important. And so that human branding approach is appropriate because it puts people at the forefront of everything that the brand does. And so there's 3 reasons, that I've identified why a great solution to, our current environment is this human branding approach. So I'll go through them briefly. The first one is, it's the way that we're made, the way we function. It's in us to give things a name, to give them meaning and distinction. In the Bible, it talks about Adam and Eve, and Adam was given the ability to name the animals, right? But in that, I feel that sort of represents how we find something new, we give it a name. We are given a significant toy when we're a baby, a kid, we give it a name. That's not just the teddy bear. That's Binky or whatever we want to call it, right? And by giving it a name, it becomes ours, right? We cement and codify that relationship. And so it's in us to want to name things, to make distinctions, to identify one from another. And in doing that, we create value, right? We like the blue toy and not the green toy. Even as kids, we understand that, we have maybe many different action figures, but there's one that's our favorite, or many different dolls, but one is our favorite. And so when we create brands, in a sense, we're doing what we were made to do, which is to establish, identify, and acknowledge, one thing as distinct from another. And we're not only just making them distinct, we're giving value to them, right? We go in the store, we see a bunch of different types of tuna fish, right? But they're not all the same. They're a little bit different. And through our experiences, we assign value, meaning, worth, preference to one versus the other. And it's like that with all different types of products and services. We create classifications, systems. And so branding is a way to help us do that. But human branding, takes into account that that's what we're really looking for, not just we don't want to be overwhelmed or overloaded with all these data points. We want to be able to create relationships that mean something to us. And so this approach kind of puts that at the forefront and doesn't just hit people over the head with a lot of information, but gives them the information that's going to be able to let them make that distinction that we're really looking to make. And that sort of goes along with the way that our brains work. We tend to think about things from the simple to the complex, and the more simple we can make a decision, that's better for our brains. Just sort of the way that our brains have evolved. It takes a lot of energy to make these really difficult decisions. And that sort of goes back to, being a matter of survival for us, right? Like if the bear is chasing me in the forest, I don't want to have to think it through complex equations. I need to run. I need to run that way. And so our brains are structured in a way that kind of get us to make quick decisions. And we use our emotions, the way that things make us feel, our associations with them, our historical connections. We use those things to help us make those quick decisions. But human branding is not about having the most words or the most things going on. It's really about connecting with those basic human instincts and emotions and the things that that lead us to take actions that ultimately the brands want us to take. And it's the way we make decisions, kind of these all sort of work together. We make decisions based on our subconscious, up to 95% according to some estimates. Our behavior is driven by our non-conscious brain. We have this logic, we have these stats, and we have all these things in our mind, but what's really driving us to take action is that subconscious brain. The mind is the key to the heart. And so you understand how people think, you can make brand appeal that moves them. And it's really about why they think as much as what they think. And so the more you can understand how people are made, how their brains work, how they make decisions, that's going to allow you to be able to craft your brand visuals and messaging to move them. Your enemies in all of this are stereotypes and assumptions and just a lot of numbers without context. Like, we really have to, all of this puts the emphasis on knowing my person really well, knowing my people, my humans, knowing my the people within my business, and then also the people outside my business that are going to get me to where I want to go with my brand. So those are 3 reasons why human branding really works for humans and for the times that we live in. And lastly is how. Okay, so how do we bring this brand with humanity into our brands? And so I have this quote. Anybody want to unmute and take a shot at who said this? You've got to start with the customer experience and work back toward the technology, not the other way around. Any thoughts?
Could it be Steve Jobs?
Yes, you're right.
Yes.
I wish I had a prize for you, but I'll give you a hand clap. That's very good. But he said that in 1997. So Steve Jobs understood that the technology is great, but ultimately what people want, where we need to start is with that customer experience. And I think this is very apropos for what we're talking about in terms of human branding. It's really about the people, what's going to work for them. And then we can figure out the technology to sort of create that experience that's going to work for them. But we definitely don't want to do it the other way around, because you can have great technology, but if the experience is lacking, then people, the humans who need to use it will not adopt it. And there's been many examples of that happening in the past. So here's 5 easy, I say easy, they're easier, 5 easy ways to brand with humanity. So we spent a little bit of time talking about these. one is tease, tempt, and treat your customers. And so I got this from a book called Customer Experience Branding. But our brains love these sorts of things. And this gets us thinking about how to engage with the brand, and it helps foster that relationship. And if we think about some of the things that are common today around gamification, that's really what this is all about. And people like to play games, they like to win prizes, they like the idea of I've got a limited window to take action. They like trailers before the movie comes out. Like all these things sort of speak to that aspect of who we are as people, and as humans. Like, so any ways that you can incorporate that into your branding, that's going to be good for you. Next, put a face on your brand. So in the past, people they had a spokesperson, right? They had Mr. Clean, they had the Chiquita Banana Lady, and people have gotten into issues with this idea of, well, let me just put a face on my brand, like a spokesperson. But there's much more sophisticated ways to kind of do that. I think what that means is just show real people. We'll look at an example later where they do that. But we've gotten away, aside from sports teams, from this idea of mascots and just a person that sort of represents the brand. What I feel works a lot better in today's world is a real person. And so any way that you can show real people having a real experience, that's going to be successful. That's going to help. One example, speaking of Apple, is those commercials from several years ago when they had the Apple guy and the Mac guy. And these are inanimate objects. These are pieces of hardware. But by giving them a face, giving them a personality, it really helped to sort of personify what the products themselves were like, but also the people that use the products. And so it became very clear to see how they sort of thought about themselves and maybe the people that use the products. And it was very effective, and they ran like many commercials for many years. But that's an example of using humans to sort of communicate. There's more cachet to using this Mac over here than this PC, and this Mac has some technology that the PC doesn't. They could have just said that, they could have listed that, but by showing the people, it was a much more effective way to do that. Tell and sell great stories. Again, just figure out how you can use story, use the framework of stories. There's conflict that drives action. There's a beginning, there's a middle and an end, there's a hero, there's a villain, there's some challenge to overcome. How can you use the idea of story? It doesn't have to be, the Iliad or anything, but just think about how you can use stories in your branding to get people to kind of understand, this is where we started, this is where we're at, this is where we're going. Even something that simple is a storyline that people can follow along. When you talk about the successes that you have in your business, or maybe even the failures or challenges, how can you put those things into stories that humans can understand and relate to? This one I like, jettison the jargon, break it down. Simple, clear speech. I always say avoid the really technical language unless that's your audience. Again, all of this is people driven. Because what we talked about, it makes the brain work too hard. People don't want that. They want it simple. And then show and tell your growth. And so if we think about, our brands being humans, like how would a human change? We don't just necessarily change overnight. Like we allow room for people to grow, right? As humans, we we allow space for people to evolve. We understand that, 15-year-old Reggie is very different than 35-year-old Reggie, right? And we expect that. And we kind of expect that from brands as well. We don't expect the brand to be what it was, in the 1960s, what it is in 2020, 2021, if it's still around, right? And so you don't want to talk about too much like this is how we're changing. Like every time a company rebrands or something, that's always the temptation. But understand that, people we like to hear about how people have changed and grown over time. And so that's an opportunity. But we also don't expect people to change. Let's say a brand gets in trouble for something. We don't expect them to just change overnight without doing some soul searching, right? Like we understand when people do something wrong, they need to understand that they made a mistake. They need to own that, and then not just talk about how they grew, but demonstrate that. And so the same things that we would expect from our relationship with a person, we expect those things from a brand. And so if brands sort of approach it that way, they have an opportunity when they make a mistake, not to just sort of say, oh yeah, we've moved on. We wouldn't really trust a person that, made a mistake that hurt people. And they said, well, we just moved on. We're going to do better next time. Like we want to see that. We want to, we'll believe you, but we won't just believe you, without some evidence that you've actually done that. And so I think it's the same thing with brands. People are forgiving. They're willing to allow you to make some mistakes, but you've got to show them that you've grown, that you've changed over time. And this idea of rebranding, what do we expect of people when they go through periods of change and evolution? Again, we expect that that period of soul searching. Here's what we learned from our mistake. Here's what we're going to do better. Here's how we're going to do that. And so even if it's rebranding for a less than positive reason, there's an opportunity for people to make a connection still with humans. And great quote and question that I like that I've come across is your rebrand a change of sign, meaning we're just sort of changing the way we look on the outside, or is it a sign of change? Is it representing some real things that took place within the business, within the brand that will be meaningful for the humans on the other side, both internally and externally? So in these times, branding with humanity means being aware of and sensitivity to the fact that every human is going through something. I think if there's anything that this period has taught us is that it's important to just remember that, like, people are going through stuff. It's not always evident on the outside, but everybody's dealing with stuff. And another thing is that people are disillusioned with the illusion of perfection. They want real, and real means flaws and how you respond to them. So it's, if you're in business long enough, you're gonna get caught messing up. You're gonna drop the ball. You're gonna have things that are less than ideal. And again, I think there's room for that, so long as you respond the right way. Like, how would a human respond if they really realize that they made a mistake and they take ownership of it? And so, I don't think people are looking for the perfect business that never makes a mistake, but they are looking for ownership. So quickly, there's an internal brand and the external brand. This idea is relevant to every type of business. You sort of alluded to it earlier. There's the humans inside your business, your staff, your people, and then there's the humans outside your business, the people that you hope to make customers, that you hope will build that relationship with your brand. And your external brand is more about expression, and your internal brand is more about experience. And so your people that are a part of your team, that are on your staff, they experience your brand. They see it lived out, and it's important to carry these ideas of humanity within your business. And as you do that, I think it makes it a little easier to carry that forth in the expression, which is what the humans on the outside see. But internally, this impacts how you treat your people from their recruitment to their resignation. Do they feel like I am seen, I'm valued, I'm appreciated as a human in this organization? Expression on the outside. Uh, at every stage, do people feel like I'm getting something real and authentic? I think these two work together. And so if you think about your brand in terms of internal and external, they both have to really serve the humans in both of those settings. So meaningful brand expression and experience, both internally and externally. This chart sort of shows what humans want, and then oftentimes on the negative side, what they encounter. So they want authenticity. Sometimes they get lies and deception, the runaround. Nobody likes that. They want clarity. Oftentimes they get confusion. They want invitation. They want to be invited to be a part of the brand. They want to feel like they're, a part of what's happening. But oftentimes they get imperatives like do this, do that. That idea of declaration and demonstration, again, that we mentioned, they want to see it in action. They don't just want to hear about it. They want flexibility. They want brands that understand their situation. Employees want to work from home because they got a lot going on at home, but sometimes that's how we've always done it. That there's no changing. They want that empathy and understanding. But oftentimes they get rigidity and policy. And so as you think about your business, your brand, what you're offering people, is it more of what humans want, or is it in this column of what humans encounter? How can you be more like giving people an expression and experience that's more aligned with what we desire as humans? How can you bring that humanity through in every aspect of your business? So a couple quick case studies and examples as we sort of wind down here. Sorry, I went backwards. So Amazon is not the most human brand in terms of, hey, they have a spokespeople that we know about. But I think for them is delivering services. Like they know what humans want. We want to be able to quickly look up our product, buy it, get it shipped to our house as quickly as possible. We want to know when it's coming. We want to be able to track that. We want to be able to, keep things in our cart without actually buying it. But Amazon has a record that I looked at it, so they'll send me other things that are similar to that product. And I think about all these, brands that are sort of a part of their ecosystem, and they all, I think, excel at delivery, like digital delivery in this day and time that we live in. They're on the cutting edge of giving people experiences that deliver products and services really, really well. They're probably best in class at that. And so they don't bring a lot of humanity in terms of their marketing or their messaging, but in the delivery of their products and services. Next is this company I found called ModCloth. It's women's clothing. But what I love about them is that these are actual staff members. These are real people that really work for the company. And they're women that are different shapes, different sizes, showing that their products are fun and they're for every type of woman. And this photo down here is several different pictures. But the idea is that, they could have used models, right? But they're like, we're going to feature our staff. We're going to show that real people really wear these clothes. They're fun. They're for everyone. And that appeals to women that are their target audience. Another great example is this company called Bevel. And Bevel makes hair care products, care and skincare products for Black men. They're very overt about that's our audience, but they recognize that some of the skin and hair care needs are different than a lot of the mainstream products that are in the market. And so, they made their own thing. But they speak to that audience, and they use these videos called Word on the Street, that are people giving testimonials, but they're real Black men talking about using these products. And you know, almost every Black man understands what's happening in this picture. At the top, there's a guy getting his hair cut, and that's not just something you do as a Black man. That's like, it's an experience. It's part of the culture, it's part of the lifestyle. And so it's not just I'm shaving my hair in the bathroom sink. Like, it's a whole experience getting your hair cut. And so it kind of elevates it to that level of cultural experience. And they're very clear about their audience, but it also shows that they really understand their audience, which is a key part of branding with humanity. And so just some numbers, branding with humanity helps grow your business. There's a company called Braze that does this brand humanity index, and these numbers are from 2018. I believe they've all gone up as our relationships with brands have intensified over the pandemic. They found that consumers who perceive a brand as human are 2.1 times more likely to love the brand, and almost 2 times more likely to be satisfied by it. Similarly, people who perceive a brand as human are 1.6 times more likely to purchase from that brand, and 1.8 times more likely to recommend it. So it's advantageous to build this brand humanity into everything that you do with your brand. It's going to cause more people to like it more and refer it to more of their friends. All right. So just to wrap up, being a human man is about being versus doing. I love to say you were a human being before you were a human doing. So it's really about, not just what your brand produces, but who your brand is. That's what people want to connect with, is showing up as your audience expects. We like people that are consistent, that are reliable, and we like brands that are the same way. Consistency and clarity in everything that you do, being the same day in and day out, and really creating an experience that people can rely on and trust in. And then thoughtfully leverage technology. So there's lots of tools out there that allow you to do things quickly and efficiently, but that should not come at the expense of being human. This is my quote: brands were created by humans to serve humans, not the other way around. That's a great thing to just remember. We don't want to live in service to the brand. Brands were created to help us get through life, to understand, to make significance and meaning. And humans are most important. The brands are important, but brands are important because they serve humans. And so that's important for, I think, every business and every brand to remember. So this is what I'd like for you to think about. We'll send this deck out. This is a sort of a homework question. I want you to think about it for yourself. How will or how does your product or service improve or enhance the experience of the humans it touches? And that could be employees or customers. And then what's one immediate next step you can take to enhance the humanity of your brand? Taking everything into account that you learned today, how can you make your brand more human?